So all of the key reservoirs that feed our water supply are below normal in a dry watershed. And then on top of that, December and January, way behind. Now you see people talk about El Nino. And so we got a strong El Nino. And then you ask them, what does that mean? Well, it's either going to be a lot wetter or a lot drier. And that doesn't help a whole lot. It depends on the exact track that the upper air takes. So that's kind of the background conditions. As we sit here today, we have a significantly less chance, 50% or less chance, of getting to average water conditions. We're late in the seasons, and it will take some incredible storms to get us up to average. What that means on the State Water Project is probably an allocation between 20 and 40%, depending on which ESA restrictions we end up with, whether the most severe or the most lenient under the biological opinions. So again, you take away ESA today, we still have water supply problems in California. And that's a very important point, because we've got to figure out how to manage the drought conditions in addition to the new regulations that we have. This has been mentioned by a couple of people, but lowest smelt numbers in the history of collecting smelt numbers. And that's after having 3 years of fairly restrictive water supplies. Now, one of the issues that we're trying to focus on is transfers, to make sure we have the ability to transfer water. As Tom Birmingham already indicated, if the State Water Project gets to a 40% allocation, there are almost no windows to transfer water anymore, which is a major change. 40% used to be a low allocation on the State Water Project. But again, if we're lucky with average conditions, we could hit 40%. The side effect is very few transfer windows. That may put a lot of emphasis in this region on in-valley transfers, east to west, exchange to west side, a lot of other options. Obviously, increased emphasis on groundwater pumping. There's obviously a key emphasis on stabilizing this year's water supply. With transfers, we're trying to make sure the biological opinions are implemented in, I would call it, the most lenient way, as opposed to the most restrictive way. But one point I've got to make is we're just rearranging deck chairs unless we fix the system. We're going to go through this every year unless we do what people in this room have known for decades that we need to do, and that's fix the delta. We have to invest in facilities, including new conveyance. We have to invest in storage. We have to start looking at other stressors that are causing the environmental problems instead of just the pumps. We've known this for a long time. We haven't had the horsepower to get it done, and we've got to get it done. Or we're going to have a meeting like this every damn year. And we get to the brink of pulling the trigger. I understand that point, and the point is, if you die in the short term, the long term doesn't help you. And that's why we've got to do both. But if we don't fix the delta, then you're never going to have a reliable water supply. It's as simple as that. I guess the final thing I would say is that we have to work on ESA. As you may know, most of your water districts are in court on the issue. The state of California is in court on the issue. We're preparing for the National Academy. We're proposing other alternatives that protect fish with less impact on water supply. But I want to come back to the issue of drought. In 1977, there was no ESA issues. And I believe even the CVP allocation was about 25% in 1977. So we've got to keep our eye on the watershed, on the water supply, and on the reservoirs. We need to implement the long-term solution, and we need to do everything we can to transfer water from those that have a little extra to those that are very short this year. And we're going to keep working. We use the state pumps to wheel CVP water as much as we can. We've used the canal in the past to move water down the system from groundwater pumping, called a pump-in program. We're going to keep doing all those things to mitigate the impacts of both the drought and any ESA impacts. But we've got to get on with a long-term solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Lester. Tomorrow, I think most of you are aware, but KMJ Radio and the Latino Water Coalition and others are co-sponsoring a meeting in the morning to precisely focus on the point that one of the points that Lester just made in terms of the long-term solution, and that's the package that the legislature and the governor enacted last fall that will address the long-term fixes. But you're absolutely correct. If we don't keep our generations of family farms and business now, this year and next year, they won't be around by the time we fix the long-term plumbing system needs of our state water system. So we've got to do both, and we appreciate your hard work, Lester, on those areas. The last two federal testifiers will be Pablo Arroyo, Deputy Director for the Mid-Pacific Region for the Bureau, and Ron Milligan, the Manager for the Central Valley Operations. They will both come up together to give an outlook on how grim this picture is and why we've got to have operational flexibility now for this season. Pablo?
Thank you, Congressman. On behalf of Reclamation and Don Glazer, I'd like to thank both of you for holding this really important forum. I'll reserve much of the comments to Ron because I understand that many of you are obviously very interested in the operational aspects at this time. Don Glazer, he deeply regrets that he can't be here. He spent a lot of time in the Valley, and I can assure you that he will continue to spend a lot of time in the Valley. This crisis is on the top of his priority list. I know that you are all extremely interested in what we're doing right now. Lester focused on the need for a long-term solution. We are certainly very focused on that. But what I wanted to touch on was just a few things that we're doing right now, which are in some ways Band-Aids, but we think will help us through this year and the coming years if they work out the same way this year is looking. First off, we've awarded a contract for temporary pipes and pumps in the San Joaquin Valley, specifically for drought relief in the San Joaquin Valley. We've worked with many of the water users in the audience, and we've identified 55 wells in the San Joaquin Valley for enhancement in the spring, and we're working on getting that contract awarded right now. We remain focused on north to south, east to west, and any other transfers and exchanges that come to our attention or that we otherwise know about. Transfers, exchanges, other such mechanisms are just critical in years like last year and the year we're looking at right now. Specific to that, for our 2010 North to South Transfer Program, we've been working very closely with the State Department of Water Resources. We plan to have our environmental compliance done for this year's transfer program in February. That's 3 months ahead of where we were last year at this time. So that will certainly help us work out a lot of the details in advance of when they're needed. Concurrent with that, we're also in partnership with the Department of Water Resources developing a long-term transfer program. Again, north to south, this transfer program will probably be a 10-year program. A couple other specific things. In the last few months, we've contributed $3 million for water marketing and efficiency projects that, when completed, will no doubt contribute additional water available to the Central Valley Project. And we've awarded $15 million in grants toward aquifer recharge and pipeline projects, specifically focused on the San Joaquin and the Central Valley Project. Lastly, we have our eyes on new projects all the time, and we're constantly discussing and looking at new projects. And we are also working very hard on level 2 and level 4 refuge water diversification projects.